Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to take complex ideas from stacks of sources and make them, well, make sense for you. Today we're tackling something really core. The architecture of the self, you could say. For centuries, thinkers, philosophers, theologians, you name it, have wrestled with the idea of the human soul. But look, we're not getting lost in metaphysics today. Our mission, it's much more down to earth. We're diving into sources that talk about the basic faculties or the powers of the soul. These are like the internal engines driving your thoughts, your feelings, your actions. Everything, really. We've boiled it down to the four most essential powers that keep coming up in these texts. We'll explore how they work together, what happens when they're in sync, and maybe more importantly, what happens when they're not.
That's right. And it's key to see these not as, abstract ideas, but as active forces, real energies shaping who you are. The material we looked at really stresses how these four faculties are constantly interacting. Sometimes they clash, sure, but they're meant to work together to guide you. If you can actually identify and understand these internal drivers, well, that gives you a really powerful tool for self-mastery.
Okay, let's unpack this internal roadmap then. Where do we start? Which faculty comes first?
Well, the sources almost universally point to intelligence as the highest, the most significant power.
Intelligence,
Okay.
okay? Or as some sources call it, al-clia.
Exactly. And intelligence in this context is often described as having this, well, almost divine or angelic quality. It's seen as the core of what makes us human. It's the key difference, right? It separates us from purely instinct-driven creatures.
So it's more than just being smart.
Oh, absolutely. Its function is really broad. It's not just about, say, solving equations. It's the power for deep thought, for reasoning things out. It's about critically analyzing the world, our place in it. And crucially, it's the faculty that lets us distinguish truth from falsehood, good from evil.
Ah, right.
It functions as our highest internal guide, both morally and rationally.
That's interesting, placing so much weight on intelligence, not just as an analytical tool, but as a moral guide. So what's the practical upshot then? What happens if this faculty isn't really active, if we ignore it?
The implications are huge. If intelligence isn't guiding us, we essentially stop being agents of our own growth. We just react. We lose that ability to plan effectively, to solve complex problems that need foresight. We can't really acquire wisdom that goes beyond just immediate experience.
So we get stuck.
Pretty much. Limited to the present moment, driven by whatever's loudest, whatever immediate stimulus hits us. Intelligence is what lets us take lessons from the past and use them to shape a better future. Without it actively working, there's no real personal growth. Just repetition.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. It's the compass. But, if intelligence is this noble, rational compass, what about when we face, say, immediate danger or real injustice? Reason sometimes feels, well, not enough when you're up against aggression, which I guess brings us neatly to the second faculty, the power of anger.
Yes, and this is where the duality of these powers really comes into focus.
Okay.
The power of anger, algarabia, it's associated with ferocity, with aggression, which makes it the one people often misunderstand the most, right? We're usually told anger is bad.
Suppress it, yeah.
Exactly. But the sources actually insist it has a vital positive role, primarily survival and defense. This power is the engine that fuels our ability to defend ourselves, our loved ones, our values when faced with genuine danger or injustice. Think of it like a protective fire, the energy needed to push back against harm.
But wait a second. Most people experience anger as, well, destructive. Road rage, arguments blowing up, even violence. How do the sources square that? How can aggression be justified if the goal is positive defense?
Yeah.
Doesn't uncontrolled anger just steamroll intelligence?
It absolutely can, and that's precisely the risk. The sources draw a very sharp line here. The power itself is essential. It's the mismanagement, the lack of control that leads to destruction. When it's channeled correctly, when intelligence is actually directing that defensive force, then anger becomes righteous indignation.
Oh, okay.
It fuels the courage you need for social change, or even just to say no when something's fundamentally wrong. It provides that necessary kick, the motivation for action. But yeah, if it's uncontrolled, if it just serves its own intensity in the moment, then it spirals into rage, into destructive behavior, ruinous consequences for everyone involved.
So it needs a tight leash, held by intelligence.
A very tight leash. It needs to be recognized, respected for its power, but definitely guided by reason.
Okay, so we have the mind's compass, intelligence, and this protective force, anger. Let's pivot then to the third faculty. This is the one often seen as a big obstacle to the first two, right? The power tied to our more immediate animalistic side.
Desire. Right. We're talking about al-shawiya, the power of desire. or appetite sometimes. And look, this power is fundamental. It drives us to fulfill basic physical needs: food, rest, reproduction. And emotional needs too, to some extent. Functionally, it's absolutely necessary for individual survival, obviously, but also for the species to continue.
So it's essential.
But risky, very risky. The problem isn't desire itself, it's inherent nature. It always wants now immediate gratification. And the sources are really clear. When desire runs wild, when it's unchecked, it creates this catastrophic imbalance. It basically forces intelligence, that noble faculty, to become its servant.
How so?
Instead of intelligence guiding us toward what's wise or good in the long run, it gets hijacked. It just starts figuring out the quickest way to satisfy the current appetite, no matter the cost down the line.
So it's not just about obvious things like addiction, though that's part of it.
No, it's often more subtle. It's a kind of corruption of our rational self.
Okay.
When our goals are constantly being set by these immediate cravings, we end up living this reactive life, just focused on consuming the next thing.
So what's the fix? How does the material suggest we manage this? Necessary but dangerous power.
The emphasis is all on balance and self-control. And who enforces that? Intelligence, primarily. Think about eating. It's the difference between eating to live and just sheer gluttony, right?
Right.
Reason has to step in and decide when desire gets expressed and how much. If reason fails, if desire is calling all the shots, the sources warn we develop this totally skewed view of reality. Our immediate wants seem way more important than any lasting truth or principle.
Wow. Okay. So intelligence guides, anger defends, desire sustains, but needs checking. That leaves one more, the fourth essential faculty. This one seems to operate somewhere between the purely rational and the purely sensory. Imagination. Yes, the power of imagination, agua mia. It deals with visualization, possibilities, abstract thought.
And its cognitive role is absolutely critical. Imagination is like the mechanism that lets us take raw sensory data and organize it into mental pictures, coherent images. But crucially, it lets us think beyond what's right in front of us, physically present.
How does that work?
It's how we visualize potential outcomes, how we grasp abstract concepts like justice or infinity, things you can't touch. It allows us to make inferences, see patterns. It's really the engine behind theoretical thinking.
Yes.
Scenario planning.
And creativity, too, I imagine.
Definitely. Think about it. Every major invention, every piece of art, every complex problem that got solved, it started in someone's imagination. It's the faculty that lets us mentally construct the future before we build it physically. It's how we think outside the box, find new solutions.
Okay, that sounds incredibly positive, almost entirely beneficial. But you mentioned earlier that all these faculties have a potential downside. The sources hint at a dark side here, too.
They do.
If intelligence needs to check desire and keep anger on a leash, what does intelligence need to check when it comes to imagination?
Its potential connection to fear and anxiety, that's the danger zone. See, if intelligence isn't keeping imagination grounded in reality, this amazing power of visualization can turn inward. It can start constructing these elaborate, terrifying scenarios that have no basis in fact.
Like worst-case thinking gone wild.
Exactly. Excessive imagination, or imagination that's totally unmoored from reason, can lead straight to paralyzing anxiety, crippling fear. And in really severe cases, it can contribute to genuinely delusional thinking. It basically manufactures threats where none exist.
And that just drains energy, right? Energy that could be used for actual defense or creation.
Precisely. So just like anger and desire, imagination is this incredible tool. But if it's misused, if it runs rampant without checks, it can become a self-made prison.
So it needs constant reality checks, governed by intelligence, to make sure our visualizations are building things up, not tearing us down.
That's the idea. Constructive, not destructive.
Okay, so let's try and synthesize this. What does it mean when we put all four together? We've got these four distinct essential powers, almost like an internal ecosystem: intelligence to understand and guide, anger to defend, desire to sustain our physical life, and imagination to create, innovate, plan ahead.
Right. And the main takeaway, really, is the dynamic interplay between them, how they work together or sometimes against each other. These four faculties, according to the sources, are the fundamental architecture of being human. They exist within all of us. Doesn't matter your background, gender, religion, whatever, it's universal.
And our personality is shaped by them.
Essentially, yes. The material suggests that your personality, your character, is largely defined by which of these four powers tends to dominate your inner life. If intelligence is firmly in charge, you'll likely strive for wisdom, for balance. If anger dominates, well, you might be defined by aggression or maybe constant defensiveness.
And desire.
Desire dominating leads to a life focused on consumption, chasing physical or sensory pleasure. And if imagination is dominant, you might be incredibly creative, maybe visionary, but potentially struggle to stay grounded. So the goal isn't to get rid of any of them. You can't. They're all essential parts of you. The goal is to achieve harmony, a state where intelligence is really holding the reins, and it uses the other three powers appropriately. Anger for defense when needed, desire for sustenance but controlled, imagination for creation but grounded, responsibly.
And a really powerful model for self-assessment, isn't it? It forces you to look inside and recognize these different drives, and to understand that your character isn't fixed. It's kind of the result of this ongoing power struggle, almost, between these forces. Just recognizing them feels like the crucial first step to actually harnessing them positively.
Yeah.
You need to know what tools you're working with.
Exactly. That's the core message. We need to cultivate these powers within ourselves consciously, making sure intelligence is the primary cultivator, you could say, leading us toward bettering ourselves and hopefully bettering our interactions with others, with humanity as a whole.
Absolutely. That idea of achieving internal balance, that really seems like the ultimate aim here. So if all four powers are constantly buzzing inside you right now, and they are, maybe here's a final thought to carry with you today. Which one of these essential faculties, intelligence, anger, desire, or imagination, do you find yourselves relying on perhaps too much right now? Which one might be subtly dictating your actions, potentially tipping over into its more destructive side? Something to think about as you navigate your day. Thanks for diving in with us.